Hello and welcome to Noni, your daily morning chat show that brings you the topics and opinions that matter to you. This morning, where do you regard as home? And why is it now so cool and on trend to be African? We'll be hearing what you think with your tweets and calls. Joining me on today's show, Esther Falana, one of the stars of Backchat London. She was born and raised in the UK to African parents, but does she regard herself as British or Nigerian? And Funmi Ogunja, Funmi, born in the UK, spends as much time in London as she does in Lagos. With the rise of hate crimes in the UK, questions of culture and identity are rising. When Afro-Caribbeans came to the UK at the request of the British Empire, it was to work. But where do we call home? England or Africa? Guys, this is a really interesting discussion because we're all mothers and our kids were all born in the UK. But depending on who I'm talking to, like if it's a white English colleague, I'd say I'm, British. But then if I'm speaking to like a Nigerian or an African, I'll be like, I'm Nigerian, I'm from Ogun State, I'm a Yoruba, and I'll be going deep, 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 deep. Yeah. Why is it so complex for us?
Like you said, growing up in the UK to African parents, but you're born here, so it kind of makes you British, but then your ancestry and your history and your background is all back home. So when speaking to a white colleague, shall I say it's easier to just say I'm British, but when it's speaking to a black colleague, if I say I'm African, you're gonna know straight away she's Nigerian, so it's just easier to get into it.
What about you? You're a bit younger than me. Esther, is it different for younger generations or is it still the same kind of blur?
I think it's still the same. It's quite a blur. Like you said, relating back to our parents, though I'm born a British, I have been raised Nigerian. Yeah. So I have got all the culture, I have all the morals and respect of how a Nigerian girl would be brought up back home in Nigeria. The only difference is I'm in Britain and I was British born. So I think that's where it's quite blurry because it's hard for us to identify. Whereas someone that's white British or that's been who's had ancestors that are British born and they have the culture and they have the generation. It's easier for them to understand.
Yeah, we actually have somebody on the line, Rabil Sikta. He's a freelance journalist. He writes for the Huffington Post, focusing on this actual topic. Rabil, why is there such a blur when it comes to black and minority ethnics in the UK identifying as themselves as British?
I think there is a problem of conflict within the identity for people who are born here but have their roots from somewhere else. They feel culturally shipwrecked. They're from two different worlds, but they don't belong entirely to either one. You can go to parts of Britain and someone won't see you as British, but they'll ask, where are you really from? And that is quite telling, the fact that to them, you're just not British. On the other hand, if, for example, I'm from Bangladesh, if I was to go back to Bangladesh, they over there wouldn't see me as Bangladeshi. They'd say, you're from Britain. That is some of the things that younger generations are having to deal with, where they're born and raised here entirely. They don't actually have any emotional ties to the country their parents and ancestors came from. But that's where they're often seen as truly coming from in the eyes of some indigenous white people.
That's a really interesting point, Rabil. I'm just going to bring it back in the studio. Thanks very much. That's really interesting because Esther, you mentioned the fact that you're born in Britain, but your home, the way you were raised in your home is Nigerian. Do you think that can be a problem, and do you think that's a problem for the British government?
I don't think it's a problem because problem would mean that there's something wrong. I just think that it's all about change. Okay, as generations come, there is change. For example, I always say to my mum, when my mum wants to discipline us growing up, for example, the way she would go about disciplining us is the way she's taught back home. Now, we're in Britain, it's a bit different. You have to adapt to the environment that you live in. So I don't think that it's a problem. I just think that we just need to, I don't think there's anything wrong with being black British, but just still be able to identify with where you're from, because that is our culture, that is where we are from.
For me, we said that you live a lot in Lagos and you live a lot in London. When you're in Lagos, do you think they can tell if you're from Dand, as they say? How?
And it's funny because when I'm in Lagos, I'm British, and when I'm in Britain, I'm African. But in Lagos, they can tell clearly by my accent. Yeah. It doesn't change. It doesn't water down when I'm in Nigeria. So, and the way I carry myself as well, there is mannerisms. You can tell when someone's British and when someone's
talking.
And do you think you can tell when you're abroad as well, like when you're on holiday?
When I'm on holiday, in terms of...
Let's say you're in Spain or you're in Jamaica or you're in Nigeria or Ghana. Is there something that stands out about British people? It doesn't matter the colour of your skin.
No, I think it's a bit harder, but I think for some reason, I don't know what it is about going back home. Yeah. Without even speaking, they know that you're not from here.
I think it's our mannerisms.
Maybe the way we dress, the way we carry
yeah.
ourselves. You know, we've got. I don't know. Maybe it's our skin. I don't know. I couldn't. You know.
But Esther, you know, we were talking about the way your parents raised you. How are you raising your daughter? Are you raising her as a British mother or a Nigerian mother?
Do you know what the weirdest thing is? This is so. It's going to be come across quite controversial, but the reality is that I've got a very British little girl. Like, she's born in London.
Yeah.
She's a Londoner.
Yeah.
Let's
So
be
she would
honest.
be.
Yeah.
So, but the way I'm raising her, I want her to know her culture. Like, she's
Yeah.
been back home once. She's going to go back home many times.
Yeah.
Because one thing I would say is that I'm very proud to be British. I am so proud. But at the same time, I'm so proud of where I'm from
Yeah.
and to be Nigerian, because there's certain skills and knowledges that I have that I would not be able to have if I didn't come from the culture that I come from. Like knowing my language, having I may not be able to speak it properly because obviously I wasn't born and raised in Nigeria, but because my mum spoke it in the house, I understand it very fluently, and those are the skills that I want my daughter to have.
What about you, Funmi, and your son?
Exactly the same thing. Whereas I was raised in the UK, raised in an African home, African community, I can't help but raise my son the same way I was raised.
Yeah.
It's going to have, the British influence, but the tradition and the culture and the underlying tones are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Disciplined, respect, religion, our food, everything.
Do you think part of the problem, just really briefly here, is the fact that we're not taught enough about Black Britons who were here for centuries?
Yeah.
As they get in America, they know so much about Black history, but we don't know anything here.
It's so good that you said that, because something that my friend says to me all the time is that he feels like, you see how America has a culture, they have like ancestors that they can tell stories of, whether it be slavery from back in the day. What is Britain's history? What is Britain's Black history? Do you understand? We are not educated enough about it.
It was before the Windrush. It was before the Windrush, clearly.
We're not educated about it enough. Whereas if you told me, sit down and let's talk about America's, history, I could sit here and school you all day. But for me to say to be a British woman, a British Black woman, and not be able to tell you the history of Black Britain, it's quite, I don't know, it's quite,
It's sad, and it goes back to education, because they're only educating us on American history.
Yeah.
Well, it's clearly a huge issue, and something that's, people are really talking about. We've got to thank Rabil Sikta, who was on the phone, and hopefully we'll be speaking to him again on another show. Still to come, where is home? And is Africa trending? Join us for more after the break. Welcome back to Noni. Before the break, we were talking about what it means to be British. But where do you call home? Is it where you're born and raised, or is it where your parents come from? Esther, I'm going to start with you, because you were using the word home a lot. And I presume you weren't talking about East London. You're talking about Nigeria. Is that where you call home?
Do you know, I'll be honest with you, where I do call home is London, is Britain. The reason I call, though home is Nigeria at heart, because it's my culture, it's where I'm from, it's my ancestral, where I come from, where ancestors are from. But for me personally, Britain is home. The reason Britain is home is because this is where I've been born, this is where I've been raised. If you took me to Nigeria and said, Esther, here you go, left me on the streets and said, fend for yourself, I don't know where I'd start.
For me,
you know what I mean? I don't have a clue where I'd start. Whereas London, I know this place like the back of my hands. This is the air I breathe. This is the walk. I've walked these streets, whether it be in the middle of the night when I'm sneaking out the house to go raving, or where, do you know what I mean? This is my home. This is what I classify as home. Though I still do call Nigeria home, because that's a different part of my upbringing and my life.
What about you, Funmi? Because you spent so much time in Lagos. You said you're back there in the summer.
For me, home is where the heart is, and when I say heart, I'm talking about my family. My mother lives in Nigeria, my grandmother, my granddad, they still all live there. And it's like, if you were to take away my British passport, where are you going to send me? You're going to send me back home to Nigeria. And, and that wouldn't be a bad thing for me, because I'm surrounded by family. I'm in a country that I love, and you won't get lost in Nigeria. Nigerians are lovely.
See, this is the difference between me and Funmi.
Yeah.
For example, you've got your family there.
Yeah.
There's not one family member that's in
You've
Nigeria.
got to have extended
No,
family.
no. Like my grandma's here. The only person I would say that's in Nigeria is my dad's mum.
Okay.
And that's it. But in terms of my mum, like, because my mum and dad are not together, and that's where that's where I've grown. Like my mum is my life. You know, in terms of that side of my family, every single member is in this country.
It's so funny because if you think of home, you know, it's got so many kind of bad connotations, hasn't it? Because some people say, you know, go home. You know, you saw the buses of sending people home. Do you think it's an insult to ask somebody, oh, where are you from? No, where are you actually from?
No, because it's good to know where you are actually from, because if we strip it, strip it down to the actual core. Where are you from? Do you know, that is the reality. That's a good question. Yeah, I'm British, but where are you really from? Because even when I say I'm Nigerian, what part of Nigeria? They're stripping me. They want to know exactly where. I'm from Ogun State. Okay. Past that, where are you from? Where are you from? So it's good to know. I don't find it to be insulting. I think it's also educational for you to know where you are actually from.
It is educational, but you talked about London. Come on, guys, you know, London isn't a good representation of Britain, because clearly, you know, most blacks live in London. You know, you go an hour away from the M25, you know, it's as white as snow, you know. Sorry about the pun, but it is.
Yeah, of course. To be honest with you, even though you may say London is not a great representation of Britain, I've still got to own it. It's London. It's my home, regardless. You know what I mean? It's my home.
I think London's pretty diverse, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very diverse.
It is.
I mean, there's a lot of Africans in London, and not just Nigerians, Ghanaians. And me and Juliana were having a chat earlier. There's like South London is heavily populated with Africans, and you know, it's very diverse.
And one thing I must say I do love about being a British Londoner is based on the fact that, again, it's very diverse. And I love, if I was born and raised in Nigeria, let's be realistic, I wouldn't know about other cultures. I wouldn't know about the other communities. Like, being a Londoner and being raised in Britain has opened my eyes to be able to educate myself on other cultures.
See, that's interesting as well, because our parents, of course, you know, they decided to come here for a reason. There's got to be some prestige and privilege about being here.
Of course, 150%. The privilege of getting a good education, of having more doors, more opportunities. Because back in the day, when our parents were growing up, there wasn't much opportunity.
You talk about opportunities, but for me, you know, you work in media. Do you think that there are more opportunities here or in Nigeria?
I think there's greater opportunities in Africa, definitely, because, I mean, when we look at the UK, I mean, TV, content-wise, there's so much going on in Africa in terms of music and fashion, and right now...
But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Good. That's the key. Right now.
Exactly.
We're going to be talking about that soon, aren't we?
It wasn't like that. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. Today, there is huge, 150%. You can win like this in Nigeria, like in Africa in general, whether it be Ghana, we're winning.
So what opportunities are we talking about when we talk about our parents came for an opportunity, or, you know, people in Nigeria, like, that red passport, you have it and you want to give it up. What is it still then about the UK that, you know, it's still kind of seen as, you know, the be-all and end-all for our parents' generation?
Do you know, I think that back in the day, it was a lot harder for them. The struggle was real. You understand? Like, in terms of even just, you know, it could be anything. It could be that just even going to school, paying for your school fees was difficult. So coming to London or coming to the UK and having a better opportunity, because, you know, here we get you can get educated, free education, free NHS healthcare. Exactly. I'm not saying that we should abuse it, but at the same time, I'm not saying that. Don't abuse it.
You're not an advocate for abusing the NHS.
But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, there was a lot more opportunities, and with that, if you used it right, you could win, and that's what you could do well.
Winning. I think that's a good way to wrap this part of the show. Now, as we've been alluding to, Africa's trending, and for all the right reasons, with the rise of films, music, food and fashion celebrating the continent. It seems people are now proud of their roots. If you're African, you're down with the cool kids. So clearly we're all cool. Why for me?
I think the spotlight is on Africa right now in every industry, in terms of our music, of our fashion, of our food. We're literally trending in every industry, and spotlight's on us, and people are finally realizing and seeing our worth.
Death, destruction, disease. I'm sick of hearing that, Esther. It's done, isn't it? Like, we're done with that. Everybody knows that's a lie.
I think above all, I have to give a lot of credit and respect to the music. Because it's really music that opened the door for.
Really?
That's what I personally believe, because let's strip it back. Nollywood has been about for many years, and yet we wasn't recognised for the acting and the good work that we did then.
Yeah.
You know, Nollywood was good, but it weren't as big.
It wasn't global.
It wasn't global. As soon as music come out and you're getting American artists notice us, you're getting, you know, people globally in different parts of the world notice us. Now, what else do Africa have to offer? Oh, wow, they have actors. Wow, they have fashion. Wow, we want to be a part of this. You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah.
So now, 150%, I have to give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
The music has really put us out on the map. It's opened doors, opened eyes, and for people to see our culture, our fashion. Like, you know, now you see, you know, different people promoting African attire, Ankara attires. I love it.
Now.
It's
so,
beautiful.
You know, people are wearing it everywhere. They're embracing it all around the world. And Esther's right. Music, I think, has put Africa on the map and opened everyone's eyes to what we have to offer.
Do you know, I think it's right, but I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm on my own here, but you know, like with the whole Black Panther thing, I kind of feel like, you know, it's broken records. I love the film. Let me just say that first of all. I don't want anybody calling in.
I do too.
But I just, can we say that that's an African film?
Do you know what? I get what you mean. I do. But do you know what it is? I think reason people like to relate it to Africa is because it's about
because Wakanda was a fake place.
Yeah. It's the culture like within, like even just the chanting, the you know, when you go back home and you see that, you know, they used to do, I think
the tribal marks.
Tribal marks. You know, like I think the tribe Falana, they used to have like certain
Fulani.
Fulani. They used to have certain tribal marks that used to mark them as to be a part of a tribe. So I think those are the reasons why people are relating back to Africa, etc. I wouldn't. Could I say, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. I don't know. But has it put Africa on the map? I think it.
I don't know. I found that film a little bit condescending.
Oh.
Being an African and you're going to do an African movie and have no like African actors and your soundtrack is American.
It was African.
I mean, like you know, our big African stars.
I know what you mean. We'd like to see Genevieve Nyaji or Omotola Jalade.
You know,
yeah.
It's like, why not come to Africa and come and bring these African actors? And you've got the soundtrack for Black Panther, American dominated, and it's an African movie, and music is big in Africa. You could have put.
See, this is the thing. This moves me on to my next question. How do we monetize it? Because there's no point us saying, oh wow, Edward Engvall, you know, he's from Ghana and he's the editor of British Vogue, and oh, this has happened. Black Panther. How are Africans going to monetize the trend at the moment, rather than it being, you know, just a column at the back of a magazine? How can we take ownership of this?
I feel like what we're doing now, you know, it's hard to monetize it, but just being proud and putting it out there, and you know,
embracing your culture, embracing who you are, embracing where you're from, and making sure you know, if they're gonna use your music, make sure, listen, this is my sound, this is my music. I want my name printed on it. You know, I think we are definitely heading in the right direction, 100%, because you know we were never noticed before for the music. So the fact that we're even being recognised is amazing. The fact that people are even wanting to collaborate. You know, you hear Wizkid and Drake on a song. You know, that was
amazing. The biggest track.
That
got a Grammy nomination.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like we're heading in the right direction. It's just taking it step by step. Everything is slowly but surely getting there.
It is slowly but surely getting, and I suppose even if you look at music in Britain, Black British artists, Skepta, Jay Haas, you know, they're all from West Africa, aren't they? But then how do we support them? Because they're kind of pushed, you know, once they make it, they're pushed as British, aren't they? But then if there's anything wrong, they're kind of put, you know, it's like, oh, he was African, or African parents, or stuff like that.
See, one thing I will say is, yes, I think there are a few artists that are really embracing where they're from. For example, I think Kojo Fund has got a different kind of flow to him. He's got like a...
Do they call it Afro pop?
I think it's Afro jungle. I think there's a name for it. I love his sound. I always pray that he does not change his flow, because you know why? He's got he reminds me of Africa, of home. It's not even just Africa, Afro-Caribbean. Like he brings it. He's got this flow about him.
Pan-African.
I feel like I pray he doesn't change his flow of music. So I feel like right now, today's generation, a lot of artists are embracing where they're from. When you hear certain people's music, you're thinking, right, it's got like an Africa. I can hear that. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, there's a certain
exactly.
Funmi, I want to ask you, because you are, you know, resident fashionista here. Is there time for an African Vogue? A lot of people are talking about it on social media.
It's overdue. It's overdue. Like, take Ankara for instance. That print has gone beyond. You have, you know, international designers using our print. and you know, building collections around it. And it's like, if you're drawing so much inspiration from our country, then why do we not have our own fashion staple? Why do we not why is Africa Fashion Week not recognized globally?
Yeah.
You know, it's time.
It is time, and you know, and you've got people like Naomi Campbell. She flew over to
gonna say
Nigeria,
that,
didn't she,
yeah.
for a Rise Fashion Week,
Week.
and it was absolutely huge. It kind of broke the internet, or kind of black internet. Do you know what I mean? So, but is there a time? Is there a time now for an African fashion Bible, or you know, magazine that everybody can go to for culture and trends?
Yes.
Yeah. The fact that we have Naomi Campbell coming over and walking down the runway wearing African designers.
Embracing it. There was no diva moments that I've heard about.
Let's also add Skepta, who has just been granted, he was made a chief of
somebody's village.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he was embracing the culture. He was wearing the whole abada, the whole, you know, clothes. That means clothes or traditional wear. Yeah, he was embracing it.
Is that a good thing?
I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing.
Because growing up, I didn't see all that.
Never.
I didn't see
in
all
a
that.
million
There was
years.
no one on TV. There was no one on. There was
I
no
was a
African.
Jafaican. I don't know about you guys.
I was a Jafaican too.
I was Jafaican. I was called Chantel.
Yeah.
That surname, I don't know where it came from. I was Chantel Brown.
And you know, I actually have to cover my head in shame because I can't believe how I used to deny
Shameful.
being
It's not your fault,
deny
though.
being African.
I don't think it's your
but I
fault.
used to fully say I'm Jamaican, and because my dad had cane rolls and he was big, I used to get away with it. You know what I mean? But no, today, and that's why one thing that I teach my child as well: be proud of who you are. You are Nigerian. You are British, yes, but you are also Nigerian. Like, teach them. Let them understand their culture. I think it's very important.
God, that's a really inspirational message. I'm not Jafaican, and it's good that we can laugh about it because a couple of years ago we would never have admitted it. So it's great to see how far we've come. Well, that's it from me, Juliana Olayinka, and my co-host for the morning, Esther Falana and Funmi Ogunja. Don't forget to tell us all your thoughts on our upcoming topics. We want to hear what you've got to say. Join me next time for more Noni Chat.